February 8th, 1945, 11:47 a.m. The Nazi guard dies without a sound. Mikhail Devyataev watches the body crumple inside the storage shed, watches his fellow prisoner lower the bloodied crowbar, watches 10 emaciated men exchange a look that says, "We just murdered an SS officer. There is no going back." Across the tarmac, a Heinkel He 111 bomber sits unguarded. Mikhail has studied that aircraft for 3 months, memorized every switch, every gauge, every control surface, all while pretending to be a broken man assembling Hitler's vengeance rockets. The Nazis think he's just another starving prisoner, broken, harmless, waiting to die. They're wrong. In 4 minutes, Mikhail will sprint across open ground, steal that bomber, and attempt the most audacious escape in World War II history. But first he has to get past the armed guards, the minefields, the flak batteries, and the small problem that he's never actually flown a Heinkel He 111, the odds of survival approximately 0. Mikhail runs anyway. Lieutenant Mikhail Devyataev crouches behind a storage shed, watching the Heinkel He 111 bomber parked 200 meters across open ground. His hands shake. Not from fear, from starvation. He weighs 98 pounds. 6 months ago, he weighed 170. The plan is insane. 10 concentration camp prisoners are about to steal a Nazi bomber from Hitler's most secret rocket base. None of them have flown a Heinkel before. None of them have working ID papers. 9 of them aren't even pilots. The mathematics are simple. Stay here, die within weeks. Run, die within minutes. Steal the plane, probably die in the explosion. Mikhail glances at the men beside him, skeletal figures in striped uniforms, eyes hollow from watching friends starve. One grips a crowbar stolen from the work detail. Another clutches a piece of metal pipe. They're weapons. Across the tarmac, an SS guard leans against a fuel truck, smoking. He has 30 seconds to live, but he doesn't know it yet. Mikhail knows this is suicide. He also knows it's their only chance, because in approximately 4 minutes he won't just escape a Nazi death camp. He'll hijack one of the Luftwaffe's bombers, fly through a wall of anti-aircraft fire, survive being shot at by his own people, and deliver intelligence that will help destroy the Third Reich's vengeance weapon program. But first, he has to make it across 200 meters of snow without being shot. Before we continue, I need you to understand something. Mikhail Devyataev weighed 98 pounds. His hands shook constantly from starvation. He'd watched hundreds of men die around him, beaten, worked to death, executed for the smallest infractions. He had every reason to give up, every logical reason to accept that this was how his story ended. But instead he spent 3 months secretly studying a bomber he'd never flown. He memorized German instrument labels he could barely read. He identified which guards were lazy, which ones could be lured away, which prisoners could be trusted with a suicide mission. While his body was dying, his mind was planning. While the Nazis thought they'd broken him, he was preparing to break them. If you believe that kind of defiance deserves to be remembered, subscribe to this channel right now. Every subscription helps us bring you more forgotten stories of courage that the history books overlooked. Hit the like button if you're rooting for Mikhail, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, because this story belongs to the world, and I want to know how far it's reaching. Now let's get back to February 8th, 1945. The guard is dead, the bomber is waiting, and Mikhail has about 90 seconds before all hell breaks loose. Mikhail Petrovich Devyataev was born May 8, 1917, in Yoshkari, a village so small most maps didn't bother with it. There was nothing remarkable about his childhood except one thing. At 22 years old, in 1939, Mikhail Devyataev learned to fly. The timing matters. In June 1941, Nazi Germany would launch Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in human history. A village kid from the middle of nowhere couldn't know that, within 3 years, he'd be dogfighting Messerschmitts over Ukraine. But some part of him must have understood that the Soviet Union was preparing for war, and flying was about to become the difference between life and death. He didn't learn in a prestigious academy. He learned through the Osoaviakim, the Soviet paramilitary aviation program that turned farmers into fighter pilots in 18 months. Grueling, unforgiving, effective. By the time Germany invaded, Mikhail had logged enough hours to qualify for combat duty. June 1941, Nazi invasion begins. Mikhail is assigned to the 104th Fighter Aviation Regiment. July 1943, promoted to lieutenant. 9 confirmed kills against Luftwaffe aircraft. July 1944, shot down over Lviv. Captured, beaten, sent to Sachsenhausen concentration camp. Late 1944, transferred to Usedom Island, to Peenemünde, Hitler's secret weapon. Peenemünde wasn't just a military base. It was the birthplace of the space age. Here, Nazi engineers were perfecting the Vergeltungswaffe II, the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range ballistic missile. The numbers tell the story. Range, 200 miles. Payload, 2,200 pounds of amatol explosive. Speed at impact, 3,580 miles per hour. Faster than sound, faster than any interceptor. Impossible to shoot down. By late 1944, V-2 rockets were slamming into London, Antwerp, and Paris. Each launch killed an average of 2 people. Over 3,000 dead. No warning, no defense. The Nazis were building them using slave labor. Mikhail was assembling the rockets that would kill his allies, and every single day he was planning the impossible. The gallows greet them at the gate. 3 bodies sway in the November wind, necks bent at angles that make Mikhail's stomach turn. The rope creaks. No one cuts them down. They hang there as a welcome sign, as a promise, as the only truth that matters in Sachsenhausen. You will die here. The SS guard doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. 500 prisoners shuffle through the gate in silence, skeletal men who've learned that sound draws attention, and attention draws death. Mikhail watches a prisoner stumble in the line ahead. The man catches himself, steadies. Too late. An SS officer is already moving. The club comes down. Once, twice. The man's skull cracks with a sound like wet wood breaking. He collapses. The guard keeps hitting him. 12 times, 15, 20. No one moves. No one speaks. The body stops, twitching. They step over him and keep walking. Sachsenhausen operates on a simple system. Starvation. Morning, watery soup, 1 ladle. Evening, 200 grams of bread mixed with sawdust. The human body can survive approximately 30 days on this. Most men last 3 weeks before their organs begin consuming themselves. Mikhail learns about the 10 days of life punishment on his second night. A prisoner whispers the rules. 10 days of standing motionless in the cold. No food, no water, no sleep. Guards rotate in shifts to ensure compliance. By day 4, men hallucinate. By day 7, they beg for execution. By day 10, they're dead. 87 men are currently serving the punishment. Mikhail can see them through the barracks window, human statues slowly freezing into corpses. The executions are random. A guard points. You die. No reason. No trial. A pistol to the back of the head, and your body joins the pile behind the crematorium. Mikhail realizes something that makes his blood ice over. Soviet officers are being systematically executed. The Nazis keep lists. They check papers. Any prisoner identified as military leadership disappears within days. He is Lieutenant Mikhail Petrovich Devyataev, decorated fighter pilot, officer of the Soviet Air Force. They will kill him the moment they confirm it. The man dies on a Tuesday. Mikhail doesn't know his name. The prisoner simply stops breathing on the bunk beside him. Another casualty of starvation. Another body for the morning cart. Mikhail stares at the corpse in the darkness. Then he searches the dead man's clothes. His fingers find the papers. Grigory Stepanovich Nikitenko, civilian, factory worker. Mikhail memorizes every detail: birth date, birthplace, family names. He whispers the identity to himself until it feels real, until Nikitenko's life becomes his own. Then he burns his soul. Lieutenant Mikhail Devyataev dies that night. Grigory Nikitenko survives. Every morning, roll call is a loaded gun pointed at his chest. Nikitenko! Here! The guard's eyes linger. Does he know? Does he suspect? Mikhail's heart hammers so loud, he's certain everyone can hear it. The guard moves on. Mikhail breathes. This happens every day for 3 months. 3 months of standing in the frozen mud, waiting to see if today is the day they discover the truth. 3 months of watching men vanish overnight, wondering if he's next. December 1944. The order comes without warning. 500 prisoners, cattle cars, now. No destination, no explanation. Mikhail is shoved into a rail car with bodies packed so tight he can't fall down. The doors slam shut. Darkness, the stench of human waste. Somewhere in the corner a man is already dead, but there's no room for him to collapse. The train lurches forward. Mikhail doesn't know where they're going. He only knows that 30 men will die before they arrive. The first man dies on the second day. He simply stops breathing, wedged upright between 2 other prisoners who don't realize he's gone until his body starts to stiffen. There's nowhere to move him, no space to lay him down. He remains standing, dead eyes staring at nothing, propped up by the living. By day 3, there are 7 corpses in the rail car. By day 5, 30. Mikhail survives by pressing his face against a crack in the wooden slats, sucking frozen air that burns his lungs. When snow melts on the outside of the car, prisoners take turns licking moisture from the gap. 3 drops of water, 4, enough to keep the throat from closing completely. The train stops and starts without pattern. Sometimes for hours, sometimes for minutes. No food enters the car. No guards check if anyone is alive. The dead remain standing because there's no room for them to be anything else. On the 6th day, the train stops and doesn't start again. The doors open, light floods in, blinding. Mikhail stumbles out into snow and freezing wind. Bodies tumble from the car. Some living, some not. An SS guard doesn't bother checking which is which. He kicks a motionless prisoner. No response. 2 other guards drag the corpse away. Move! Schnell! Mikhail forces his legs to work. Around him, men collapse immediately, their bodies giving out the moment they try to walk. Guards beat them where they fall. Welcome to Peenemünde. The island reveals itself slowly. Barbed wire fences stretching to the horizon, watchtowers every 100 meters, searchlights sweeping the perimeter. But it's what stands in the center that makes Mikhail's breath catch. Rockets. Massive. White. Pointed at the sky like accusing fingers. Vergeltungswaffe 2. Vengeance. Weapon 2. An SS officer addresses them in broken Russian. You will build rockets. You will work 12 hours. You do not work fast, you die. You sabotage, everyone dies. Verstehen? Mikhail understands perfectly. He is about to spend every waking hour assembling the weapons that will rain down on Soviet cities, on Leningrad, on Moscow, on the people he swore to protect. The irony is exquisite torture. Each rivet he hammers is a bullet aimed at his own people. Each circuit he connects brings death closer to Russian soil. The Nazis have turned him into a weapon against himself, and refusal means execution. That night, lying on wooden planks in a barracks that reeks of death, Mikhail stares at the ceiling and feels something inside him break. Not his will, not his determination, his last shred of innocence. He has become complicit in his own people's murder. The Nazis don't need to beat him into submission. They've made him an accomplice. The runway appears during a work detail 3 weeks later. Mikhail is carrying steel parts across the compound when he sees them. Aircraft parked in neat rows beside the fuel depot. Heinkel He 111 bombers, twin engines, glass nose, Nazi markings. His heart stops. His body keeps moving, pretending not to notice, but his mind is suddenly, violently awake. Aircraft. The word echoes like a prayer. He's spent months accepting death as inevitable. But aircraft mean possibility. Aircraft mean escape. Aircraft mean, you! Mikhail freezes. An SS guard is pointing at another prisoner 50 meters away. A young Ukrainian who made the mistake of stopping to look at the planes for 3 seconds too long. The guard walks over calmly, draws his pistol, shoots the man in the face. The body crumples. Back to work, the guard announces to no one in particular. Mikhail keeps walking, eyes down, heart screaming. But the seed is planted, and seeds, even in the darkest soil, find ways to grow. Mikhail begins studying the Heinkel the way a priest studies scripture. Reverently, obsessively, knowing his life depends on every detail. He can't approach the aircraft directly. Guards shoot prisoners who wander near the runway. So he watches from a distance, memorizing angles and proportions. During work details that pass near the hangar, he steals glances at the cockpit through the glass nose, throttle position, instrument layout, control surfaces. The breakthrough comes in January. A work crew is ordered to clear snow from around the parked bombers. Mikhail volunteers immediately, ignoring the confused looks from other prisoners. No one volunteers for anything in Peenemünde. While shoveling, he positions himself near the landing gear. From this angle, he can see directly into the cockpit. For 8 precious minutes, he memorizes everything. Fuel mixture controls, magneto switches, trim wheels, rudder pedals. A German pilot arrives to run an engine test. Mikhail watches through the bomber's greenhouse canopy as the pilot moves through the startup sequence. Fuel valve, open. Mixture, rich. Magnetos, both. Primer pump, 3 strokes. Starter engaged. The starboard engine coughs, sputters, catches. Mikhail commits every movement to memory. 2 days later, he accidentally drops his shovel near the maintenance shed. While retrieving it, he pockets a small placard that's fallen off a damaged aircraft. German text labeling hydraulic controls. He can't read German fluently, but he can match symbols to functions. Each stolen piece of knowledge is a brick in an impossible bridge. He chooses the men carefully. Ivan Krivonogov, former Red Army sergeant, broad-shouldered despite starvation, eyes still sharp. Sergei Volkov, quiet, methodical, the kind of man who thinks before speaking. Pyotr Sokolov, young, 22, desperate enough to be fearless. Andrei Malygin, engineer before the war, understands mechanics. 3 others, Russian speakers, all military background, all weighing the same equation. Certain death, slowly, versus possible death, quickly. Mikhail approaches each man individually, speaking in whispers during the few minutes between work shifts and lights out. "I'm planning something insane," he tells Ivan first. "You can say no, but if you say yes, there's no backing out." Ivan stares at him for a long moment. "I'm listening." One by one, they agree. Not because the plan is good. It isn't. Not because the odds are favorable. They're not. They agree because staying means dying in inches, and at least this offers the dignity of choosing how. The problem reveals itself on February 3rd. One of the men, Nikolai, a factory worker from Minsk, is caught stealing bread. The punishment is standard: interrogation followed by beating. Mikhail watches through the barracks window as SS guards drag Nikolai into the administrative building. He's gone for 4 hours. When he returns, his face is pulp, 3 fingers broken. He can barely walk. That night, Nikolai collapses onto his bunk and weeps. They asked about escape plans. He whispers through split lips. They know prisoners talk. Mikhail's blood turns to ice. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I swear, nothing." But Nikolai's eyes won't meet his, and in Peenemünde, even a moment's hesitation under torture can kill everyone. Mikhail faces an impossible choice: include Nikolai in the escape and risk him breaking under pressure, or exclude him and risk him informing out of revenge or fear. Ivan leans close. "We can't trust him. If we exclude him, he becomes a threat. If we include him, he's still a threat." Mikhail stares at Nikolai's broken form. "He comes with us," he finally decides, but he doesn't know the date until the last possible moment. February 7th, 1945. Evening roll call. Mikhail gathers the 8 men in the corner of the barracks, speaking barely above a breath. "Tomorrow, morning shift, when the guards change for lunch." No one speaks. There's nothing left to say. February 8th is 20 hours away. And after that, either they'll be free or they'll be dead. February 8th, 1945. 11:43 a.m. The guard's name is Klaus. Mikhail knows this because he's heard other soldiers call him by name. Klaus is 22 years old, blonde, barely old enough to shave. He smokes cheap cigarettes and complains about the cold. In 4 minutes, he will be dead. Pyotr approaches him casually, gesturing toward the storage shed. "Herr Wachtmeister, bitte, broken equipment, need approval." Klaus sighs, annoyed. These Russian prisoners are always breaking things. He follows Pyotr toward the shed, rifle slung loosely over his shoulder. He doesn't notice the other men positioned in the shadows. The door closes behind them. Mikhail stands in the corner, crowbar raised, and for one terrible second he hesitates. Klaus is young, just a kid, really. Maybe he was drafted. Maybe he didn't want this war any more than... Ivan doesn't hesitate. The pipe comes down. Klaus's skull cracks with a wet, hollow sound. He drops, instantly, twitching. Blood pools beneath his head, spreading across the concrete floor in dark fingers. Mikhail stares at the body. His first kill on the ground. Different from shooting down a Messerschmitt at 10,000 feet. Different from watching distant explosions through gun sights. This is close, personal. He can smell the blood. See Klaus's eyes, still open, still staring at nothing. "Strip him," Ivan orders, already moving. "We have 90 seconds. Hands move quickly. Keys, pistol, ammunition belt, uniform jacket. They'll need it to cross certain checkpoints. Sergei is shaking. We just killed. We're at war." Ivan cuts him off. This started long before today. Mikhail wipes blood from his hands onto his prisoner uniform. Rationalization won't help. Guilt won't help. Klaus is dead. They are alive. The mathematics are simple. They move toward the door. That's when they hear footsteps outside. Everyone freezes. Another guard, older, heavy-set, is walking past the shed, 20 meters away. He pauses, turns his head toward the door as if sensing something wrong. Mikhail's hand tightens on the pistol they've just stolen. If the guard investigates, they'll have to kill him too. If they kill him here in the open, the entire base will know within minutes. The guard takes one step toward the shed. Then another voice calls out, "Schneider, Mittagessen." Lunch. The guard hesitates, glances once more at the shed, then turns and walks toward the mess hall. 8 men release breath they didn't know they were holding. "Go," Mikhail whispers. "Now." They slip out of the shed, moving in pairs to avoid suspicion. The Heinkel sits across the tarmac, 200 meters of open ground. They make it 50 meters. Then the alarm bell starts ringing. Someone found Klaus, or someone noticed the prisoners out of position, or God himself decided this escape dies here. The bell clangs across the compound, urgent, unmistakable, deadly. Guards pour out of buildings, rifles raised, voices shouting in German. Mikhail locks eyes with Ivan. "Run!" The world collapses into pure motion. 10 men sprint across frozen tarmac, legs that haven't run in months suddenly screaming with adrenaline. Behind them voices shout in German, whistles blow, boots pound pavement. The Heinkel is 150 meters away, then 100. The first gunshot cracks across the airfield. Mikhail doesn't look back. Looking back means slowing down. Slowing down means death. Bullets kick up snow to his left, to his right. A round pings off metal somewhere close enough to make his ears ring. 50 meters. Andrei stumbles, catches himself, keeps running. Blood blooms across his shoulder. He's been hit, but doesn't stop. 20 meters. They reach the bomber in a chaotic scramble, hands grabbing at metal, bodies pressing against the fuselage. Mikhail hauls himself up the ladder into the cockpit, movements frantic, hands shaking so badly he can barely grip the controls. Behind him, gunfire intensifies. He hears Andrei scream, not pain, but rage. Mikhail risks a glance through the canopy. Andrei has turned around. He's standing in the open, arms spread wide, shouting at the advancing guards in Russian. "Here! I'm here, you bastards!" Drawing fire, deliberately. Bullets tear through him. He staggers but doesn't fall, still screaming, still pulling every rifle in his direction. The other men use those precious seconds to climb aboard. Andrei collapses. Inside the cockpit, Mikhail's hands fly across unfamiliar controls. Fuel valve, open, mixture, rich, magnetos, both. He hits the starter. Nothing. He tries again. Dead silence. His stomach drops into black horror. "Batteries!" Ivan shouts from behind him. "The batteries aren't connected." Of course they aren't. The aircraft is parked. The Germans removed the batteries to prevent exactly this. Outside, guards are 60 meters away and closing. A truck races across the runway toward them. "We're dead," Pyotr whispers. "We're dead. We're—" Sergei is already moving. "Sergei, no!" But he's out the hatch, dropping to the ground, sprinting toward a maintenance cart 40 meters away. Bullets chase him across the tarmac. He zigzags, arms pumping, somehow untouched. He reaches the cart, grabs the battery, turns to run back. The bullet hits him center mass. He goes down hard, the battery tumbling from his hands. "Sergei!" He doesn't get up. For 3 seconds, the battery sits alone on the tarmac, halfway between the maintenance cart and the bomber. Then Sergei moves. Bleeding, dying, he crawls, inches forward, drags the battery toward the aircraft with the last strength left in his body. 15 meters. 10. Ivan drops from the hatch, sprints out, grabs the battery, and drags Sergei's body back toward the plane. More gunshots. Ivan screams as a round tears through his leg, but he doesn't stop. Hands reach down from the bomber, hauling both men up. Sergei's eyes are glassy. Blood pours from his chest. "Go," he whispers. Then nothing. Ivan slams the battery into place, hands slick with blood. His own. Sergei's. He doesn't know anymore. Mikhail hits the starter. The engines cough, sputter, then roar to life. The propellers spin, howling, beautiful. Guards are 30 meters away. Mikhail slams the throttle forward. The Heinkel lurches. They're moving. The Heinkel lurches forward like a drunken beast. Mikhail's hands grip controls he's only watched others use, muscle memory from his P-39 screaming that everything is wrong. The throttle response, the rudder pressure, the weight distribution. This isn't a fighter. It's a 14,000-pound bomber, and it wants to kill him. He pushes the throttle, the engines roar, the bomber accelerates, then suddenly swings hard left. Mikhail yanks the rudder. Overcorrects. The aircraft spins violently across the tarmac, tail whipping around, wingtip scraping pavement with a shower of sparks. "Straighten it!" Ivan screams. A supply truck races toward them, horn blaring. Driver's eyes wide with terror. Mikhail slams rudder and brake simultaneously. The Heinkel skids, missing the truck by meters. The driver bails out, tumbling across snow. Behind them, muzzle flashes light up the runway. Bullets punch through the thin aluminum fuselage like it's paper. The sound is deafening. Metal tearing, men shouting, engines screaming. Mikhail lines up with the runway. His hands are shaking so violently he can barely hold the yoke steady. He pushes the throttle to maximum. The bomber accelerates, 50 kph, 70 kph. The runway blurs beneath them. He pulls back on the yoke. Nothing happens. Not enough speed. He holds it, praying, willing the aircraft into the air through sheer desperation. The fence at the runway's end rushes toward them, still not airborne. "Pull up!" someone screams. 100 kph. The yoke finally responds. The nose lifts slightly, then the wheels hit a rut, and the bomber slams back down, bouncing hard, landing gear screaming in protest. Mikhail aborts, slams the brakes. Out of the Heinkel skids to a halt 50 meters from the fence. Bullets continue ripping through the fuselage. One shatters the side window. Glass explodes inward. A man screams. Nikolai, hit in the arm, blood spraying. "Again!" Ivan shouts. "Go again!" Mikhail spins the bomber around, taxiing back toward the start of the runway. Every second they're on the ground is another second closer to death. Guards are running toward them now, 50 meters away, rifles raised. Second attempt. Mikhail doesn't give himself time to think. Throttle full. The engines howl. The bomber tears down the runway, faster this time, more committed, 80 kph, 100 kph. Behind them, a bullet punches through the cockpit. Pyotr makes a sound, half gasp, half whimper. Mikhail glances back. Pyotr is staring down at his chest, where blood is spreading across his prisoner uniform in a dark bloom. His hands come up, touching the wound, confused. I'm hit," he says, almost apologetically. 140 kph. Mikhail pulls back. The nose lifts. The wheels leave the ground. Then touch down again, skipping. 160 kph. He pulls harder. The ground falls away. They're airborne. The Heinkel climbs, sluggish, protesting, but climbing. Mikhail's heart hammers as he fights to keep the wings level. Every instinct screaming that they're too slow, too low, too heavy. Behind him, Pyotr coughs blood. Below them, Peenemünde spreads out like a map. The rocket assembly buildings, the barracks, the crematorium, the guards running like ants. Then the first anti-aircraft gun opens fire. Black explosions blossom in the air ahead. Flak shells detonating at 500 meters, 400 meters, close enough that shrapnel pings against the fuselage. Mikhail banks hard left. Another explosion, this one close enough to rock the entire aircraft. Pyotr slumps forward. Gone. And they're still climbing into a sky that wants them dead. The Heinkel claws for altitude, engines screaming at maximum power, but the altimeter barely moves. 2,000 feet. Holding. Mikhail pulls back, harder. The yoke trembles in his hands. The bomber should be climbing. Fuel tanks are half empty. They're running light on ammunition. But instead they're wallowing through the air like a dying bird. "We're too heavy," Ivan shouts from behind him, reading the instruments over his shoulder. Then Mikhail sees it, a dark shape emerging from the clouds to the east. Twin engines, sleek fuselage, Junkers Ju-88. German fighter bomber, top speed 360 mkh, armed with 3 7.90 mm machine guns and a 20mm cannon. The Heinkel maxes out at 270 on a good day. This is not a good day. "Fighter, 9 o'clock!" Mikhail throws the bomber into a dive, trading precious altitude for speed. The Ju-88 adjusts, closing distance effortlessly. Professional, patient. The German pilot knows he has every advantage. The first burst of cannon fire tears through the tail section. Metal shrieks. Someone screams. Mikhail banks hard right, then left, serpentining desperately. But the Heinkel responds like a truck compared to his old P-39. Every maneuver is sluggish, predictable. Another burst. Rounds punch through the fuselage. The man behind Mikhail, one of the quiet ones whose name he never learned, jerks once and stops moving. "We're too heavy!" Ivan screams again. The altimeter reads 1,400 feet, dropping. Mikhail does the math in microseconds. 8 men aboard, 1 dead, ammunition boxes, fuel, the aircraft itself barely controllable. He opens his mouth to say something. Ivan is already moving toward the rear hatch. "Ivan, no!" But Ivan knows the same math. He meets Mikhail's eyes for one terrible second. "Get them home!" Then he jumps. The bomber lurches upward immediately, suddenly 180 pounds lighter. The altimeter starts climbing. Mikhail doesn't watch Ivan fall. Can't. He pulls the yoke back, diving into the cloud layer, praying the German loses them in the white. The Ju-88 follows, then overshoots. The German pilot banks hard, trying to reacquire, but Mikhail is already changing course, skimming treetops, flying so low the bomber's belly nearly scrapes branches. The fighter makes one more pass, guns blazing, then breaks off, out of ammunition, or fuel, or patience. Mikhail doesn't care which. They're alive. 10 minutes later, they cross into Soviet-held territory. Mikhail sees the front line, trenches, artillery positions, supply trucks bearing red stars. Relief floods through him like warmth. Then the first Soviet anti-aircraft shell explodes 50 meters to the right. "No! We're Soviet! We're—" Another explosion, closer. Black smoke fills the cockpit. The radio doesn't work. The identification codes are German. To every gunner on the ground, they're just another Nazi bomber penetrating Soviet airspace. Their own people are trying to kill them. A shell fragment tears through the port engine. It coughs, sputters, dies. The propeller windmills uselessly. The Heinkel drops. Mikhail fights the controls. One engine screaming, the other dead weight. The ground rushes up. Snow-covered fields, trees, a frozen river. "Brace!" The bomber hits hard. The landing gear collapses instantly. The fuselage skids across ice, tearing itself apart. Metal shrieking. The right wing shears off. Fuel sprays. They slide 300 meters before slamming into a snowbank. Silence. Then someone moves. "Out! Get out!" Mikhail kicks open the shattered canopy, tumbling into snow. Around him, bodies emerge from the wreckage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 survivors. The bomber's fuel catches. Flames erupt. They stumble away from the inferno, collapsing in the snow, gasping, bleeding, alive. Soviet soldiers appear through the trees, rifles raised, then different vehicles, black sedans, NKVD, secret police. The officer who steps out doesn't lower his weapon. He looks at the burning German bomber, then at the skeletal men in striped prison uniforms. "You are under arrest for treason against the Soviet Union." The interrogation room smells of sweat, cigarette smoke, and fear. Mikhail sits across from a stone-faced NKVD officer who hasn't blinked in 20 minutes. Behind him, another officer stands silent, hand resting on a pistol. "You were captured by the enemy. Yes, you lived in a Nazi concentration camp for 6 months. Yes, and we are supposed to believe you did not collaborate?" Mikhail's jaw tightens. He's lost 70 pounds. His body is covered in scars from beatings, frostbite, starvation. 3 of his teeth are missing. He just flew through hell to escape a death camp, and they're calling him a traitor. "I stole a Nazi bomber," he says slowly, each word deliberate. "I flew it here. I brought you intelligence." The officer leans forward. "Or the Germans let you escape with false intelligence to infiltrate Soviet lines." The cruel irony lands like a punch. Mikhail survived Sachsenhausen, survived Peenemünde, survived stealing an aircraft under gunfire, being shot at by both sides, crash landing in frozen wasteland, and now his own people might execute him anyway. "I can draw you the entire layout of Peenemünde," Mikhail says quietly. V2 assembly buildings, launch pads, fuel storage, security rotations, everything. The officer's expression doesn't change. "Do it." Mikhail draws for 6 hours. Every building, every fence line, every guard tower, the locations of the rocket assembly halls, the testing facilities, the fuel depots. He marks where scientists work, where prisoners sleep, where executions happen. He tells them about the V2 specifications he overheard, the launch procedures, the targeting systems, weaknesses in the perimeter. His memory becomes a weapon. 3 weeks later, Soviet bombers hit Peenemünde. The intelligence is perfect. They destroy fuel storage, damage assembly buildings, capture intact rocket components that will accelerate the Soviet missile program by years. Mikhail receives no credit. He's released from NKVD custody but remains under surveillance. Suspected, watched. His military records note his capture, which marks him forever. No medals, no recognition, just suspicion. Years pass. Mikhail returns to civilian life, working factory jobs, never speaking about what happened. Former POWs are treated like contaminated goods, too dangerous to trust, too shameful to acknowledge. He carries the names of the dead like stones. Andrei Malygin, shot drawing fire so others could board. Sergei Volkov, killed retrieving batteries. Pyotr Sokolov, bled out in the cockpit. Ivan Krivonogov jumped so the bomber could climb. 2 others, killed by shrapnel and friendly fire, whose names he whispers every night before sleep. They gave everything so 6 men could live. And the Soviet Union treated those 6 like criminals, 12 years after the escape. The letter arrives without ceremony. Hero of the Soviet Union. Stalin is dead. The political winds have shifted. Someone reviewed the Peenemünde intelligence files and finally connected the dots. Mikhail reads the citation in silence. He's 50 years old. Most of the men who escaped with him are already dead. Some from war injuries, some from the psychological scars that never healed. He outlived them all. At the ceremony, journalists ask him how it feels to be recognized. Mikhail thinks about Andrei's body sprawled on the tarmac. Sergei crawling with the battery. Ivan's eyes before he jumped. The flash of fire as the Heinkel exploded behind them. It feels, he says carefully, like it came too late. Mikhail Devyataev died in 2002. By then, most people had forgotten his name. The Nazis tried to work him to death. They tried to starve him into nothing. They tried to erase his identity, his dignity, his humanity. Instead, he stole their bomber, escaped their fortress, and helped destroy the very weapons he'd been forced to build. They tried to erase him. He erased their airfield instead. And that, despite everything, is how the impossible becomes history. If this story proves anything, it's that history's most incredible moments often belong to people the world tried to forget. Mikhail Devyataev's escape remains one of the most audacious acts of defiance in World War II. 10 starving prisoners stealing a Nazi bomber from Hitler's most secret weapons facility. The intelligence he delivered helped the Soviets capture V2 technology that would later become the foundation of their space program. One escape. Decades of consequences. Subscribe to this channel so stories like Mikhail's don't disappear into footnotes. Hit that button right now. And if you think this story was intense, click the video on your screen. Trust me, you're not ready for what comes next.